Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the new to Booktube tag because I'm in fact new to Booktube. It's funny how that works out. This tag was created by Between Chapters, so I will link the original video down in the description if I remember. So let's just dive right in. Question number 1 is, where are you joining us from? I am joining you from Central Florida. I'm currently going to school in Tampa, but I will be moving back to Orlando where I was born and raised in a few months, so expect a location change soon, but for the time being, we're in Tampa. Question number 2 is, how old are you? I am 20, about a month shy of 21. Question number 3 is, why did you join Booktube? I joined Booktube because I really love storytelling, and this community is very focused on storytelling, obviously. I really enjoyed games and movies a lot of my life before I got into reading in the past year or so. But those communities aren't as focused on storytelling, they're focused on like other things. So I figured if my main focus was storytelling, this was the place I needed to be. Question number 4 is, what's the meaning behind your channel name? I chose Zach Tries to Read because I would always tell people when they would ask me, do you read? I would always say, well, I try to read, I just don't always get to it. Because until about a year or so ago, I rarely got to reading. I read like one book a year. Even though I was a strong reader, I just would never actually sit down and do it. So it's a reference to that I would always try to read, but usually never actually did it. Question number 5 is, what type of books do you like / what kind of books you want to talk about here? I really like any type of book that is non-realistic fiction. So science fiction, fantasy, horror, these kind of things, alternate history, anything like that that's different from the world that I actually live in, because I live in it enough, so why not go somewhere else? Question number 6 are, who are some of your favorite authors? Historically, I would have told you Stephen King, but me and Mr. King have had a rough go of it. As of late, I kind of had developed a very love-hate relationship with a lot of his works. As of late, it's been C.S. Lewis, but I kind of feel like I need to read more of his books before I can really say for certain that's who I'd say. But for now, I guess we'll say Stephen King pending C.S. Lewis. Question number 7 is, what's the last book you read? The last book I finished was The Moon is Down by John Steinbeck. I got this collection from my school's library. Very good anti-war novel. I'm trying to get through some classics. Not really great with classics, but I really enjoyed this one, which is funny because I usually don't like books that are really sad and miserable, but John Steinbeck managed to do a good job writing this one, so I enjoyed it. Question number 8 is, what book are you currently reading? I'm currently reading Deadline by Mira Grant, which is the second book in the Newsflesh trilogy. This is a zombie novel trilogy in which society doesn't break down, and it's about a group of bloggers as they search for the truth and conspiracies come out and all sorts of exciting stuff. It's a great series, but I will warn anyone who wants to read it that these books will destroy you emotionally, so be prepared if you want to dive in. Question number 9 is, what do you use for bookmarks? A store I go to in St. Petersburg, Florida, gives out bookmarks when you buy any book, so I have a few of these laying around, and if I don't have one of these with me, I usually just remember what page I'm on. Question number 10 is, show us your current TBR pile, so insert picture here. Question number 11 is a series of which do you prefer questions, the first of which is, do you prefer hardcover or paperback? I really don't have a preference between the two. There are things I like and dislike about both. I like the way hardcover looks on shelf better, and I like that you can like throw it in a book bag without worried about it getting folded or torn up too bad. But I like that paperback is cheaper and it's easier on the hands, it's lighter, and so I could really take either one. It just kind of depends on the situation. The second one is, do you prefer ebooks or physical books? Definitely physical books. Part of the reason I started to read more was to spend less time staring at computer screens, so ebooks kind of defeats the purpose. And the last one is, do you prefer owning or borrowing books? Definitely owning books. I'm trying to get better about borrowing from the library when I can, just so I'm buying less things. But as far as borrowing from other people, it stresses me out because I'm super overprotective of my stuff and my books, and so I feel like when I borrow someone else's stuff, I should show more respect for their stuff than they do for my stuff. And so I end up getting freaked out about, what if something happens to their book? So for that reason, I definitely prefer owning books, because it's mine, and if I do something to it, it's mine. Who cares? Question number 12 is, what book or series got you into reading? And I actually have 3 separate answers. The first one, I actually wasn't a reader growing up, as I kind of alluded to earlier. I was an audiobook kid growing up, and the series that got me into audiobooks was the Spiderwick Chronicles by Holly Black and I forget the other author. It's 2 authors. One's Holly Black, I know that. And I remember my mom picked me up from summer camp one day, and she handed me something. She goes, I got this for you from the library. And she goes, it's read by Mark Hamill. And 5-year-old me said, who? And she goes, Luke Skywalker. And since I was a huge Star Wars fan, I was instantly like, oh, okay. And by 15 minutes in, I was so engrossed in the story that I totally forgot it was Mark Hamill. I really like those books. It's been years since I've read them, but I still fondly remember them. Don't watch the movie, though. The second book that I want to talk about, the book that really got me into reading for the first time, was The Hunger Games. Like I'd say most people on Booktube, I read The Hunger Games in middle school. And I remember reading it in 2 days, which probably isn't impressive to anyone on the site. But it was a huge deal for me because I never read, and suddenly to read a book in 2 days was this huge deal for me. And for years I remember trying to get back in that space where I could just tear through a book, because I always wanted to be a reader, because my mom was always telling me that I should read more and everything. And I read a few books in high school, but I never really was super into it. And when I discovered Booktube, I was like, okay, let's try reading again. Let's see if I can do this. And the book I ended up picking up was The Long Walk by Stephen King. And it's kind of a funny story with this book, because after I finished it and the more I think about it and reflect, I actually kind of hate this book. But it was a page turner when I picked it up, and I got through it in 3 days. And it was, again, like I said with The Hunger Games, where I realized that I could be a reader and get through books in a reasonable time if I would just sit my butt down and read. And so I had to be thankful for that to this book. But I might do a whole video on this book, because everyone loves it, but me, seemingly. So those are my answers. Question number 13 is, how did you discover Booktube? I was watching Jenny Nicholson one night, and she has a video called I Did It, I Found the Worst Book, which linked to a Lily C. Reed's video, which is unfortunately now private, called, I think it was called This is Literally the Worst Book I've Ever Read. And that linked to Jordan Harvey's brilliant, hilarious Zenith rant review. And I loved that video, and ended up watching a few other booktubers rant reviews, and from there I got to Booktube's non-rant videos, and here I am. Question number 14 is, what challenges do you think you'll have with your own channel? Definitely one will be editing. I'm in a video production class this semester, and so I know how to edit, but I also know it is a giant pain in the tush, and that I will have to sit and listen to my own voice, which no one likes hearing their own voice. It's just a fact of life. So that's going to suck. And the other thing is that I live with my sister, who does not leave the house very often. She only really leaves leaves the house for night classes. And so I'm probably going to have to film at night, so the lighting might get weird. I have umbrella lights, so I mean, it won't be ultra dark, but it'll probably be shadowy and maybe a little weird looking. So those 2 things I'd say are probably going to be the biggest challenges. And the last question, question number 15, is, where else can we find you? I will link my Goodreads and my Twitter in the description. My Twitter is great if you like hearing a guy rant about Florida and post song lyrics. That's a lot of what I do on my Twitter. My Goodreads is kind of sparse, because as I said, didn't read very much before, I think last May is when I started reading seriously, but I'm getting there, and I'm slowly adding more and more books. So if you want to take a look, I'll link it down below. And yeah. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you back next time. Later.